Okay, hi sisters. We're back tonight to continue on in our last video. We're going to continue looking at the golden calf idols and how it actually leads us into modern day religion. For anybody who's ever picked the Bible up, and these guys who actually spend years in these what are they? I don't know what they're called. Sanatoriums. I forget what they're called. Places where they supposedly are educated in the Bible and all that, they certainly have no understanding of what it means to study and to actually look at the evidence and to piece it together. So, and according to the Bible, it isn't on them. It's actually on the women, on the daughters to piece it together, which is actually what we've been doing. So we're going to continue looking at the golden calf idol and how it's impossible not to understand what was going on. So we're going to pick up where King Jeroboam was making these idols. And we're going to read the commentary in a minute, but first we're going to go to a passage that links us to how he actually himself became contaminated. So we're going to start in 1 Kings 12:28. We're going to look at the idolatry that's going on in this chapter. If you want to study this whole chapter, it's a very interesting chapter. We'll just begin. It says Jeroboam's idolatry. So it's in verse 27. We'll just look at these three verses right quick before we take you to where his actual contamination began. It says, if these people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, their hearts will return to their Lord. So he wasn't worried about the idolatry that was going on, because it was Rehoboam here that they were talking about. And he didn't want his people in the north going to the king of Judah going, hey, you're our king. So he says, well, what can I do to offset them going back up there and returning back to Rehoboam, king of Judah? Then they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So after seeking advice, the king, Jeroboam, made 2 golden calves and said to the people, going up to Jerusalem is too much for you. Here, O Israel, are your gods, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. 1 calf he set up in Bethel, and the other in Dan. Now we actually find, we discovered the key of David using 5 key passages. This is one where we pick up King Jeroboam. And it's also linked to the key of David and how we understood that it was actually the daughters, that they were violating their rights or God-given glory that had been handed from their creator over to these daughters, and how the men were actually violating that covenant. This is how we picked up what the key of David was. But in 1 Kings 11:27, we get this. Now, did I want to read the whole? Yeah, I'll go back out here because it begins in verse 26. Okay, it's not going to take me back. Go back. Yeah. So this is where it says Jeroboam's rebellion. All right. So it's in 1 Kings 11:26. And Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, an Ephrathite, so he's from the north kingdom, of Zeredah, Solomon's servant, whose mother's name was Zeruiah, a widow woman, even he, Jeroboam, he wasn't a king at this, he lifted up his hand against the king. And this was the cause that he lifted up his hand against the king. Solomon built Milo and repaired the breaches of the city of David, his father. So to repair the breaches here, you know what the word for breach here was? We looked at this when we discovered what the key of David was. And if you pull up breaches here, it's going to take me a minute. Wow. It's really slow tonight, sorry. If we hit on that word breaches, okay, it's not going to actually be the word breach that you're going to have to hit on. You're actually going to have to hit on the word repaired. Actually, they've got the damages, so that's what they're saying is breach. Okay. A broken wall, outburst, bursting forth. So a breach, a bursting forth is an opening, a gateway in other words. Let's just pull it up. A bursting forth, the breaches in the wall. An outburst, a breakthrough, a door. Now that's me saying a door. It's not there. It's saying a broken wall. A gap, a break, to break through. A gap, an opening in the wall is also a gateway or a door. So he was calling these gateways of the daughters of Zion, he was calling them breaches in the wall. So when we go to this other word, repaired, that King Solomon repaired, and of course it had to go back too far, it's 5462. And when you look this word up, to shut, to close, right? My computer just went. Come on. It's been doing this all day. Sorry. Okay. Now it's back. Taking its good old time. Sorry. To shut up, close, confined, in prison, quarantine, locked, shuts, shut tightly shut, as in a gateway. So this was actually what he was doing to the daughter's birthright, is what they were doing. And we linked Micah 2 to their birthright. And let's do that. I wasn't going to. But for anybody who hasn't discovered what the key of David was, it was the daughters of Israel inside the nation. A core group is what we discovered of these women who held the right to govern. And the kings, and watch what it says in Micah 2. We've been through this multiple times on this channel. So this is what it says in Micah chapter 2. And we'll get it right. So woe to those who dream up wickedness and prepare evil plans on their beds. King Solomon would be one of these. King Hezekiah was another one. At morning light, they accomplish it because it is in the power of their hands to do so. Certainly is in these wicked kings' hands. They covet fields. You see, this was why Jeroboam was coming against King Solomon. They covet fields and seize them. They also take houses. And they were taking the houses of these daughters. How do we know that? Well, we got to go to Jeremiah 9. And we figured it out quite simply by using 5 passages that it was the women they were coming against. They were removing their birthright. They covet fields, they seize them, and they also take the houses. They deprive not a man, but a woman of her home and her of her inheritance, her personal inheritance. Her personal inheritance was the right to write the law and to rule over the land, and by extension, her children were to follow her law. So then we get the Shulamite saying, look not upon me, my mother's sons were angry with me, they made me the keeper of the vineyard or of the fields, but my own vineyard have I not kept. You see, they refuse the spirit of her covenant, is what they refuse. So in that day, one will take up a taunt against you and lament mournfully, we are totally ruined. He measures out the allotted land of my daughters, and he removes it from me. He allots our fields to traders. To who? Well, we saw King Solomon making multiple covenants with the king's daughters from all the other surrounding Adamic nations. They were coming in upon her wave upon wave. It says in Job chapter 31, I believe. She says, they have breached my wall and they rush upon me wave upon wave. They were taking their birthright from the righteous daughters, known as the key of David. And he was sealing up these so-called breaches. And this is why Jeroboam was coming against him, okay? So therefore, there will be no one in the assembly of the Lord to divide the land by casting lots. She told him, fine, from now on, you get no more land. You get no more land from me, and I'm the one that creates it. So quit your preaching. They preach. They should not preach these things. Shame will not overtake us. So they were saying to these daughters, you have no rights. We'll preach what we want. We'll do what we want. Oh, that art named the house of Jacob, Israel. Is the spirit of the Lord straitened? Are these her doings? Do not my words do good to her? that walketh uprightly. You think it's just all about you, she was saying. But recently my people have risen up like an enemy. You strip off the splendid robe from my daughters, it should say. It's got from those, from my daughters who are passing through confidently like those, as if you are men at war. It says like those returning from war. So even of late my people is risen up as an enemy. You pull off, the robe with the garment from them that pass by securely, as men averse from war, as if you return from a war. They were acting very warlike, beast-like against the daughters and their rightful birthright. And they were rising up against these daughters, and they were removing their houses, their inheritance from them, and their right to write the law. Now, when we go to Jeremiah 9, we get this further validated for us. Okay, so it's being very difficult. Well, I must have my fingers. Okay, what was it? Jeremiah 9? Yes. And in Jeremiah 9, we absolutely understand it was the women that they were robbing their houses from. It was no man. They just put that in there after they did the nasty, that's all, to cover their lie over, which man has been guilty of from the beginning of time. Oh, that my heads were waters and mine eyes a fountain of tears, that I might weep day and night for the slain of the daughter of my people. This is what they were doing to him. Now, this they've got as Jeremiah. I think there was some sons, some fathers, some husbands that actually wept for the slain of the daughter. They saw what they were losing. They recognized they were going to lose the way of life that God intended to rule on this world. And they saw what it was creating, especially for the daughters in the land, these wicked sons. And so he says, oh, that I had in the wilderness a lodging place of wayfaring men, that I might leave my people and go from them, for they be all adulterers, an assembly of treacherous men. Now, I'm not so sure that that was Jeremiah saying that. I'm not so sure it wasn't the daughter of Zion herself saying this. Oh, that I had in the wilderness a lodging place of, I'm not sure it should be wayfarers, travelers' lodging place, that I might leave my people and go away from them, for they are all adulterers, a company of treacherous men. This was what the men of Israel had become. They were turning on the covenant, and they were actually choosing to perjure themselves in the courts of heaven, which is actually what King Solomon did. And we saw him actually developing the beast system 666 that puts man in charge of her rightful inheritance, which was the children. And because the children are her birthright, not his, she also has the right to govern them. And so the law was to be found at her tongue. And when she was given covenant and came down into this earth, the men turned on that covenant. And so we see this over and over. It gets to be a repeat. And it says in verse 3, and they bend their tongues like their bow for lies. So your tongue is allegorical to your sword, your bow allegorical to your covenant. So like their covenant for lies, they bend their tongues, their words, like their covenant for lies. But they are not valiant for the truth upon the earth, for they proceed from evil to evil, from one generation to another. And they know not me, saith the Lord, your creator, your maker, the one you denied in the beginning, your mother. Take ye heed every one of your neighbor, and trust ye not in any brother, dear sister, for every brother will utterly, there we go with Jacob's name, supplant. He wrestled with her, daughter Israel, and he stole her birthright, is what you get. There is a male and a female in the womb, and it is mother that gives life to a complete whole body of a woman who is the firstborn of the womb, a daughter. She's not a rib hanging off of him, never was. And we get that complete truth established for us in the earth. Look at that. Look at that. For they proceed from evil to evil from one generation to another. Their fathers are Baal. They're sons of Belial, sons of darkness. That's what it means. Sons of worthless deeds. That's what they are. Those men standing on the pulpit, exalting themselves every time they say Father and Son gave life to everything, created everything, made everything, and completely debases you. It's hate in their heart. And you can say, no, it ain't. Look around at what their man-made religion and law system has done to womankind and her children. For they proceed from generation to generation. They do not know me. Take ye heed, every one of my sisters, of his sisters. It's got neighbors. Take ye heed, every one of her neighbor. Those boys to the south. All right? So the daughters in the north were the rightful rulers over the kingdom. They would flow like a living water into the south kingdom, right? This is what was being torn down and destroyed, their birthright. And the house was the house in the forest of Lebanon, where the government of God, as this village of women, if you'd like to call them, from Psalm 68, would meet and receive the law. And that would go out into the land. And it was a righteous law for everybody. She says, I don't take bribes. I don't have favorites. You are all equal in my sight. You are my children. And that's how most mothers who are real mothers really do feel about their children. They love them the same, truly. So they proceed from evil to evil. Don't trust any of your brothers to the south, for every brother will look to supplant you, and every brother will walk with slander. And he did. That's why Satan, the accuser, the name Satan, straight back to Baal, your husband, the first Adam in the beginning, who slandered his wife, who was the spirit of the covenant, so that he could steal her throne of power. And in the process, he actually perjures himself in the courts of heaven. So, and they will deceive everyone, his neighbor, his sister. And we get them doing that in Jeremiah 23. They have taught their tongues to speak lies, and they do. Watch them on the pulpit. They have taught themselves great lies, and they're fooled by them. This is a snare that he laid for us to fall into. He actually falls along with his harlot, because they're fooled by this wickedness. They're actually fooled. They can't reason. They can't think. And they fall into their own snare, their own pit that they made for us, daughters, to fall into. They have fallen into it. It says, and they do not escape it. So they have taught their tongue to speak lies, and they weary themselves to commit iniquity, and they have, and they do. Thine habitation is in the midst of deceit. Through deceit they refuse to know me, saith the Lord. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, behold, I will melt them and try them, for how shall I do for the dear daughter of my people? Their tongue is as an arrow, words shot out, it speaketh deceits. These same arrows, we use Genesis 49 as also a further reference for the key of David to identify it. That was in Genesis 49 verses 23-24, where Baal, B-A-A-L, their husbands, archers, were shooting their wicked words as the vine, this branch, which, go look the word branch up, daughters, were passing over the wall. Who did we see walling up the breaches and denying the key of David? These daughters of Zion, as the key of David, shooting at them with their wicked words, their lying words. Their tongue is as an arrow shot out. It speaketh deceit, these wicked sons. One speaketh peaceably to his sister with his mouth, but in his heart he layeth in wait with his wicked words. And that's what these sons of Baal and Belial did. And these are their descendants, who stands on the pulpit and goes, Father and Son, oh, glory to Father and Son. Screw you, mother and daughter. And that's what the law on our neck has actually gotten them. They've gotten all your goods. He was a thief and a liar from the beginning. He is not fit to be in covenant with, mother says. Shall I not visit them for these things, saith the Lord? Shall not my soul be avenged on such a wicked nation as this? So down we go, because we're still in Jeremiah here. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts. No, it is in verse 17, weeping in Jerusalem. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, consider ye and call for the mourning women, that they may come, and send for the cunning women, the wise women. Yeah. That they may come, and let them make haste and take up a wailing for us, that our eyes may run down with tears and our eyelids gush out with water. For a voice of wailing is heard out of Zion. How are we daughters been spoiled? We are greatly confounded, because we have had to leave the land, because they have cast down our dwellings, our houses, our homes, our body. Is what they were actually casting down when they were placing their law system on our necks as a yoke that would actually enslave us to their male idols. And if you can't see that in the land, it's because you simply choose not to wake up and see it. So this was what was going on. The kings were tearing down the daughter's rightful inheritance identified in Micah 2. And they can stick he there all they'd like. They lie. And that's just what the sons of Baal, the sons of Belial, and the descendancy has done. So he shut, closed, walled up the breaches here. But we saw King Jeroboam coming into play here. And he was actually coming on behalf of his mother's house, an inheritance that King Solomon was attacking. And he was actually establishing the harlot spirit that he was taking in covenant from all the surrounding Adamic nations. And they were actually silencing the voices of these daughters on the hills of Israel, which is stated in Ezekiel 17 or Ezekiel 19. She was as a lioness who raised up mighty scepters, mighty daughters for the rule. And then they silenced her voice on the hills of Israel. That's what these wicked kings were doing. So what does he say? And it came to pass at that time when Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem. No, that's not it. It's verse 28. He says, and the man Jeroboam was a mighty man of valor. Well, what man ain't today? They're all mighty men of valor. And Solomon, seeing the young man that he was industrious, well, of course, he made him ruler over all the charge of the house of Joseph. He did he? Well, that sounds like a bribe to me, doesn't it? And so we actually see the contamination from Judah spilling over to the men in the north in this case, although there is the idea that the rebellion did begin in the north by the men there. They turned on these wise women first, is in there to some degree, but we saw Solomon actually mounting the charge, in a sense, to really make this the established covenant in the land, which is why only the wise can see what 666 actually means. It's not for the wicked. They will never see anything. They have too much pride. So we see all of this, okay? So the point was, we wanted to see why Jeroboam was doing what Jeroboam was, why he became what he became. And it was more or less that he was just simply being bought off. He was bought off by King Solomon. And so now when we go here, we begin to see how this contamination really begins to take hold in the entire land of Israel and feeds out as this bull god worship. So now we're going to scroll down under 1 Kings 12:28. That we looked at. So the king took counsel and made 2 calves of gold, and he said to them, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Look and behold your gods, Israel, which brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Well, it was the presence of God identified as the daughters of Israel that actually brought them through the sea. right? Which is now allegorical to the Red Sea that needs to be parted by the presence of God once more. This admixture of religious lies and laws. And it will be parted by the true sword, the true word of God, right? And out of both sides of this parted water, which we've examined again, will come the new, right? Will come the new out of these two extreme ideas of this, really part and parcel of the same covenant that was never meant to rule in the land. So when this admixture of lies, this Red Sea, an allegory, also your wine on the table, that the Chimerians, your fake priests, mixed wine in the glass for fortune and destiny. We see them doing that, but it represents that lying covenant on the table. But the presence actually has to go through once again and part this admixture of lies, which is why the little book is sealed to these men that you actually see being told it. And we saw John being told it and then being told to seal the little book up, because it's not for men to speak on, it's for the daughters to speak on. It's for these women, specific group of women to speak on. It's not for man. So we saw John understanding. We saw Paul being took up to the third heaven, showing things he couldn't speak on. We saw Daniel going silent and his face becoming very sickly, like once he was shown this little book they actually had to seal up to the end of days, because it cannot be spoken by men. It has to be spoken by the daughters, because mother is waiting for the return. Oh, Shulamite, what might we see when the Shulamite returns? As it were, the company of two armies. The company of two armies is 144,000. Now, we've discussed all of this. You'll have to go back through all the videos to understand all the things that we have come to understand, and we have understood a great deal by continuing on our little pathway without everybody cutting our knees out from under us, which is exactly what you got to do. You just got to continue on your merry little way with the Spirit showing you it. That's what you got to do. So now I wanted to read in this particular commentary, it really brings it out. The religion of today. So now I got to find where it is exactly. So just give me a second here. Position. Okay, so I got to go down here further. Okay, so down we go. If he were wise, must therefore be proven a substitute, a counterfeit worship. It was not a counterfeit worship, because watch what they say here. Okay, now there's those, they try to cover over all their crap by throwing in the occasion word of truth and then continue to bury the lie under more lies and more lies, when it's actual absolute proof that this was a lie from the beginning. It says, you changed your glory over to that which eateth grass. The glory was identified as the daughter of Zion. That was the glory of Israel, where the law was found, which was why they were so vast in number in Numbers 2. And then you get Balaam and Balak looking out over this massive number of Israelites that were just absolutely terrifying. Balak. And from every indication, from every bit of our study, we understand it was the wise women that were ruling in the land of Israel. It was their law, and it was causing their numbers to just grow so massively that Balak was terrified of them. And so Balaam is another name for actually Baal. Balaam is plural of Baal, and we know that the men and some of the women over time slowly began to turn to this idol of Baal, husband as Lord and God. We get that with Jezebel because she was raised in a house where Baal, husband, father, Lord was Lord and God and needed to be worshipped. So she was brainwashed right in it. She was raised right up in it. And Ahab took these same idols into his house to be worshipped and to be bowed down to. And Jezebel helped build that up. That's the harlot spirit known as Jezebel. It is not a feminist. No, a feminist would actually be against that. And we're not talking about the ridiculous notion of what men call feminists. A feminist means somebody who's fighting for women to have equality. That's what that means. Let's just verify that. So, let me see here. Yes, we'll start reading here. I will give you. Okay, so his object, if he were wise, must therefore be to provide a substitute, a counterfeit worship, which is a load of bull. Watch what gets rendered here. So this is just them trying to bury their lies over with another lie. I will give you, he virtually says, at Bethel in Dan, old sanctuaries of our race long before Jerusalem usurped their place. Those visible emblems of the heavenly powers, those visible emblems. God says, make no image, neither male nor female. You follow the laws off of my presence. That's right, my presence, which was identified as the women, not the men. So they made this visible image, supposedly, or emblem, which they were not to make, of the heavenly powers, which they flipped all around. They changed the glory out for that which eateth grass, which was a bull, such as are now found only in the temple. You too shall possess those mysterious forms which symbolize the invisible. Does it really? But you shall have them nearer home and easier of access. Now, this is what they say. There can be little doubt, consequently, that the calves were imitations of the colossal cherubims of Solomon's temple, in which the ox or calf was probably the forma precipua, I can't say that, 1 Kings 6:23, of gold. Hardly of solid gold, possibly covered with, the wood covered with gold plates, similar to the cherubims, probably of molten brass. Yeah. Okay, so I don't know if I want to read that. But read this entire commentary. They just keep burying lie after lie on top of a new lie. We're talking about idol worship here. God never told them to make a bull. And in this picture, so somebody's got something screwed up somewhere, majorly. But in this picture that I have, do I have it here? Oh, where'd it go? Anyway, I've shown it on different times, this image. And it's two doves in the new presentation from the Temple Institute in Israel. And I did have it here. I don't know what I would have done with it. Is that it? Let's see. It may be in, oh, maybe it's in this book. Let's look. But I've shown this image, and it's two doves, two golden doves. Nope, that's not it. It's not two bulls. That's the image, made up image of God that they're saying is the invisible image of God. You know, this is a picture of what your true God would look. No, it's not. God says, you saw no image of me. You make no image of me. You follow the law off of my daughter's tongues was what you were supposed to do. But you denied your glory is what you did, which was the righteous he of David, the wise women, the daughters, when you tore their house down and you refused their law and you perjured yourself in the courts of heaven, to which mother then says to her daughters, return, return to me. And she's waiting, which is why the men are not allowed to speak on it. She's waiting for the daughters to return. So, let me see. Yeah. That's what I read. And we further get the idea that calf and bull is an absolute, outright blasphemy against God. So we're going to go to, where's the passage? Okay, did I not pull it up? Okay, I'm not going to go there. I'm going to read it because I did write it down. Hosea 13, verse 1. When Ephraim, that's Israel, in the north kingdom, 10 tribes, represents a feminine, what does it say? Spoke, there was trembling. She trembled before the Almighty God. That's not Father. There was trembling. She was exalted in Israel, but she incurred guilt through Baal, through the idol of Baal, and through her husband denying her law. So there's a court case pending because she's actually got to present her case. It's never been presented, which is why the book is sealed up. It's on her, these daughters, to present their case. They've actually never took their own part and defended it. So, mother's waiting. Return, return. O Shulamite, what might we see when the Shulamite returns, as it were the company of two armies? So, but she incurred guilt through Baal, through husband, through the image of this bull calf, which then we're told becomes husband, bridegroom, standing as your Lord and Master. Just go study it. And she died. That's how she died. By listening to that lie. 2. Now they, the sons, sin more and more and make for themselves cast images, idols skillfully made from their silver or their gold. All of them the work of craftsmen. People say of them, they offer, watch this, they offer human sacrifice. They were murdering the daughters. We saw Jeremiah weeping over them in Jeremiah 9, and you can find that weeping going on through much of Jeremiah about these daughters that were being murdered, and they offer human sacrifices. That's what the men were doing. We find them murdering the wise women on the cornerstones when we understand what the words actually are saying. In Lamentations chapter 4 verse 1, they were actually murdering the sacred stones. A stone is feminine. She was your foundation stone and what the entire creation was to be built upon. Instead, they began to smear lies. They whitewash the wall is what it says. So we'll maybe look at that. And this might just be it for this video. And then we'll move into the wall in the next once I reorganize my thoughts a little bit. So they offer human sacrifices and kiss the what? The calves. Therefore, they will be like the morning mist, like the early dew that vanishes like chaff blown from a threshing floor, like smoke through an open window. What is Jesus? He's a calf. He's a bull offered up, yes, for sacrifice. No, he's an idol. And you were not to be found bowing to no idol. You were to be found listening to the daughter of Zion's covenant, which was the law off of her tongue. And he says, hey, sure, I'll take that in covenant. And then he lied and he accused her. Yeah. So this is a quick video. It's short, I know, but we're going to move into the wall next. And that wall is allegorical to Adam's wall here. We know she has one too. She's actually an individual unit all by herself. Hard to believe, isn't it? You'd never believe that looking around the world, right? That she's actually an individual body with her own full set of ribs. She didn't come off of his. Guess who gave life to her? Oh, Mother did, just like Mother gave life to him. And then he lied his backside off about the whole thing because he knew over time this religious lie was going to empower him and getting every good he wanted from her, and he got it. So, okay, so that's what tonight's video is about. That's 39 minutes. I think that's long enough. I'm feeling less inclined to make long videos. I get tired. My thoughts get tired. I hope I didn't fumble over too much. So in the next video, we are going to look at the wall and the whirlwind. We're going to look at that part, possibly. I should make a note here. In Job 31, where she says, they roll in upon me, wave upon wave upon wave. We know King Solomon had what, 800 wives and 200 concubines, somewhere in there. I can't remember. It might have been 900, 600, whatever. These were the harlot, what's called the harlot spirit from the surrounding Adamic nations, kings, that King Solomon was actually taking in covenant. And he was walling up the breaches of the righteous daughter, that it was her right to govern the land with her law, and he chose a harlot that would help him build up Moloch. Moloch is actually derived from Melech. Melech means king, because King Solomon wanted to be adored, and he wanted to be built up. Look at all the men. Aren't they the same? Sure they are. Too much pride to accept the truth. And then mother says to her daughters, ask of me the heathens. These are heathens, bound to idols. That's what idol worship is. Ask of me the heathens, and I'll give them all to you, and you can do with them what you want. She says, I'll send my rod to rule. You wanted a idol, girls? You wanted a harlot, boys? I'm going to give you just what you want. So in Psalm 2, where she actually begets her firstborn daughter, it's not a son. Oh, like everything, they got a son in there. It's all about that son in the womb and another son and another son. It's always about sons, because there's no such thing as daughters on planet Earth. Well, if it wasn't about daughters too, then we wouldn't be here. And if we weren't here, he wouldn't exist. And he don't like that. You know, that's just too much power in a woman's hand. What does she say? Yet I have set my, not king, queen, upon my holy hill. She says, you forgot my holy hill. And then she says, asks this question, and she's asking it to her daughters, who shall ascend into my holy hill? She, not he. Oh, they stuck that he pronoun. She with clean hands and a pure heart. The only one I could find with clean hands and a pure heart was the Shulamite. Return, return unto me, dear daughter. Who shall ascend into my holy hill? She with clean hands and pure heart. What does it say in Psalm 2? She says, this day have I begotten thee. She says, yet have I set my queen, not king, upon my holy hill of Zion. I will declare the decree. She's going to declare it to her daughter, and her daughter's going to declare it. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my not son, my daughter, the firstborn of my womb. Isaiah 49, I will give you to be a light unto the world, and you will bind them all on thee as the true spirit will. Not as a bride, but as a spirit of this covenant that you denied in the beginning. Thou art my daughter, this day have I birthed thee. We are birthed through the Holy Spirit. She alone births us. Father can't. Son can't. It's only mother and daughter that can actually do these things. Ask of me, she says, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance. So, I don't want to talk about myself. I was puzzled over these two quotes that I seen in the air one morning. My eyes actually weren't open, they were closed, but I could picture them hanging in the air. And one of the two quotes said, the price of your house is the cost of the dying. So I think her inheritance, that's the definition of her inheritance, which is why red is very significant to this house's color. This house's color is built on bloodshed, unfortunately. So she says, and I shall give the heathen for thine inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for your possession. You'll get them all back, and they will be for you to do with what you will, which means we actually got to cut the wicked away, which is also why you're coming up with the color red and bloodshed. So thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. And again, they want to say this is Jesus. Jesus is an idol. We've proved he's the idol. We do get an image of Joshua, not necessarily an image, but the idea of a wise, smart man who actually knew that the true power was to build up the righteous spirit, and that scepter to rule through was actually going to give us and lead to eternal life and great riches. Now, there is some idea that Joshua actually existed and was perhaps a real man that died upholding her and her law. So he would be the firstborn male, but he's not the firstborn of the kingdom. The firstborn daughter is identified as the firstborn of mother's womb that the first Adam denied and was just so jealous of and hateful towards. And that's exactly what man-made law is about. It's about hating on her. That's what it's about. So you shall dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O you kings, or you queens. Be instructed, ye judges of the earth. And we are what's called the judges. From all study that I've done, she was the judge. They smote the judge upon the cheek. That's in Micah chapter 5. Let's look at that briefly. We'll finish this. Serve the Lord with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the daughter, not the cow's lips. Kiss the daughters, and lest she be angry, and ye perish from the way when her wrath is kindled but a little. And we studied that too. When she's just a little tiny bit angry, they back off. They don't want to see her full wrath opened up, because when it is, they wouldn't survive it, is the idea. So when you would perish from the way when her wrath is kindled but a little, blessed are all they that put their trust in her. And who? Wisdom. She's wisdom daughter, and so by being wisdom's daughter, she is actually wisdom herself. So when we go to Micah 5, we understand who the actual judge is. She's the lioness also. So let's get to Micah. The end here, right quick. Sorry. I'm just trying to figure out where it is. I always get it mixed up, these little books. You get back and forth through them so much. And as you get older, it gets harder, for me anyway, to retain all this information that I do know. And I'm thankful that I know it. It's took a lot of years of study. It's took a lot of listening to the Holy Spirit to be able to understand what most just simply will not give the Spirit the time of day to show them. So, Micah 5. Now gather thyself in troops, O daughter of troops. That's exactly what it says. And it is a reference to these daughters and this daughter. He hath laid a siege against us, and he did. He laid a siege against her. They shall smite the judge, smite the judge of Israel with a rod upon the cheek, and they did. They struck her. Which is also what one sister said, and I just said, he had to be against, Moses in a sense had to be against her as well, because he struck the rock. Now he may have struck her in anger, and when he did it, it plays out as a ritual, is what it plays out. And then they go, oh, the law of Moses, the law of Moses. The law was not Moses. The law belonged to God. And it was supposed to come from the presence of God, who was identified as God upon this earth. And so they were to enforce her law. The sons were not doing that. They were turning on her law system is what they were doing. And so we see Moses striking the rock. The rock was the foundation stone, which was known as the key of David, the righteous daughter. What they did was they struck her. And they put in place a false foundation, a harlot spirit that would bow to man as God and say he's the cornerstone and all this crap, and on and on and on it goes. But we also saw Moses not being allowed to enter the promised land. He was actually shut out of the promised land, along with, I saw it in a dream, I was there. And he was there. And for some reason, I could look out through his eyes. And I forgot that. When I was speaking about Moses, but I saw who I thought was Moses in a dream. with me in this garden. And we could look out. I could look out through his eyes. And that I was a little girl. I was a little girl dressed in a white robe. And he was an old man. He had long gray hair. And you go, oh, now I know you're lying because men aren't supposed to have long hair. No. He had long gray hair. He had a long beard on him as well at the same time. And he had this long off-color white robe. It was more of an ivory. And his was cinched at the waist and it was billow. Mine was very different. I was a little girl and he was an old man. And I could go up to, and when I had the dream, my first thought when I looked in the dream was, oh, what is Moses doing here with me? And I looked out through his eyes and I could see out through his eyes. And it puzzled me for years. But you see, she got shut out with him was what I was being told in this dream. When Moses got shut out, she got shut out as well. So he did strike the rock, but I also saw in a dream who I believe to be Moses also separated in this garden. So I don't know. I can't disregard personal facts that I myself have seen and know. You can because you never saw them. But you can put it together and add it up that it is the only thing that reasons and makes sense. There is not 2 males on planet Earth. There's not 2 males in the womb. There is not 3 males on planet Earth. There is male and female, and the female gives life. And you told the potter, the creator, that she had no power over her own creation. That's what they told her. So it reasons, it makes sense. And that's what wisdom says. When I called, you couldn't be bothered to listen to anything I had to say. And so I'm going to laugh at you in the day of your calamity when you could not bother to open your ears and listen and hear what reasoned. You couldn't be bothered. You'd sooner be found bowed to an idol, especially the women. I just will never understand these women who goes, no, we don't deserve to have rights. We deserve what's happening to. And I've heard it. I've heard it in the churches over the years. When I was little coming up, I heard women say these things and certainly thought them. So, I mean, they get brainwashed into this foolishness. Women absolutely was equal. And that's how the true living God works. God don't favor one over the other, especially in this sinful world, and say, oh, man's over woman. Yeah. Does that make sense? No, don't make an ounce of sense. You know what it comes down to? Hate in his heart. That's what it comes down to. And you can see it and you can study it too, if you truly want the truth. But then it says, this world cannot receive the spirit of truth. But it also says it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. In Psalm 2, she says, I'll give them all to you. You can do with them what you want. The cost of your house is the price of the dying. It means judgment. That's what it means. So there's the video. Thanks for watching. I pray the Lord blesses you all with an abundance of truth, the pure water, the truth. She says in Isaiah 55, come to my waters and drink freely. Buy means believe. It doesn't mean you got to purchase it with blood. Nope. She says, come freely to my truth and receive of it. So there it is. Thank you all for watching. Again, I pray you're blessed with an abundance of truth. And I hope you all have a lovely day. And thanks again.